All right, so what we're doing tonight is we're concentrating on e-signing, and when we get a PDF and we need it e-signed, how to load it into zip forms. Okay, so it's fundamental stuff that we've got to know, because sometimes you're going to get the seller's disclosure. Hey, how you doing, Don? Sit right there if you want. Sometimes you get a seller's disclosure and it's on MLS, but now you need to drag and drop initials and signatures. All right. So what I did is I have an agent full report and I have a tax roll, and we should all know how to do that. So if not, what we need to do is later tonight or during the week, I get the homework would be to go to DHS Realty YouTube, go to playlist, and I have buyer videos on how to pull an agent full report and how to pull a tax roll. Anytime you tell me we're going to write an offer up, I'm always going to tell you to call me when you've printed the tax roll and the agent full report. This is everything you need to make an offer. And then, of course, you need the pre-approval letter. Okay. So a couple things about the pre-approval letter, because we've had some questions this week. When you get a pre-approval letter and you open it, anytime it says 96.5 as a loan to value, automatically it's what loan? It's FHA. If it says a 90% loan to value, it means it's a 10% down. Well, that means if you're offering $450,000 and it's a 90% loan, your down payment's what? $45,000. That's 10% of $450,000. That's going to be in 3A, always your down payment. And then you're going to add B, which will be a loan amount, and it'll always equal your offer. So if $45,000 was 10% of $450,000, then your loan amount's going to be $405,000. Yeah. And then you're going to add A and B, and it'll equal, or 40, or 400. You're going to add it, and it's going to equal 450. Okay. All right. So you printed the agent full report and you printed the tax roll. So if you don't have these, there's a lot of them at the. Will you grab those on the counter there, Tim, or over there, and so y'all can have plenty. So the first thing we have to do is we're jumping ahead just a tad, and for tonight, we're going to say that the buyer wants to make a $450,000 offer. Yep, you're good. So the buyer wants to make a $450,000 offer, and we're doing 10% down. So the first thing, hey, Cassandra, you know what?
You can come over here, Cassandra.
Perfect.
This is all review for me.
Yeah, sit right there. Right here. So so we've logged out of MLS because we know that we're going to offer $450,000. And so at this point, the buyer is at their house or they're somewhere, and we need to go ahead and send the contract to them. We're going to assume we've already got an IBS and a buyer rep. So tonight, what we're doing is we're doing the contract and any addendums based on this printout. Okay. You've already texted the agent after you've shown the home. Hey, Paul, this is Doug. I just showed your listing. I know you're with Keller Williams. Is 408 Shady Bend still available? I made an appointment yesterday.
It is available.
It is available. Okay, cool. Any kind of issue with a lease back, or does your seller, what does your seller want in the terms of possession?
Seller like 15 days lease back if possible.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like you have a preferred title company. Is that still the one you want to use?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I don't see the preferred title company. Do you have a preferred title company?
No, you can use whichever one your buyer wants to use.
Okay, perfect. So those are the types of questions you get before you write up an offer. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to texasrealestate.com. So the Wi-Fi is Spectrum something. It's the only one with Spectrum in it. And the password is heavywater256. Okay. So if you're not on Texas Real Estate, kind of look at somebody. And once you get to texasrealestate.com, there's about six ways to get to zip forms. I just go this way. So it's however you want to get to zip forms. You good? Okay. So it's however you want to get to zip forms. So texasrealestate.com, and in the right corner, you're going to hit login. And when you hit login, you're going to have your email and your password. You're going to hit login again. Takes you right back to the same screen. Sit over there if you want, comfy. And now it's going to say, hi, Doug. Hi, Trang. Hi, Paul. And then to the right, you're going to hit zip forms. When you hit zip forms, the screen turns blue. When the screen turns blue, I've said almost like religiously that you're looking for one tab and one tab only, and it's the new tab. That's it. You never hit anything else. So when you hit the new tab, you're going to have 5 boxes that pull up. If I go too fast, let me slow it down. So just raise your hand, because it's this is a Wednesday night work session for us to become experts. So every time you hit the new tab, 5 boxes come up. We don't care about the last 2 ever. and you only work with 4 people your whole real estate career, a buyer, seller, hey Vanessa, a buyer, seller, or a tenant or a landlord. Well, we sit next to Vanessa and Mark and on the couch and get them. I mean, you don't need to log in, but just to get them caught up with us. So we know that it's not a seller. We know it's not a tenant. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick the second box. And when you pick the second box, the next screen, you're going to name it. So let's say I was working with Tim. Let's say the address is 408 Shady Bend. We got it right here.
Mhm.
I can name it Goofball. I could name it Redhead. I could name it Muscle Man, Schwarzenegger. It doesn't matter because he'll never see it. So, but I am going to name it Tim. So I'm going to name it Tim, and we're going to act like he's the buyer. And I'm going to always select the dot underneath there that says residential. Always. It just dumbs it down. Always. It doesn't matter. It could be a condo, a lease. I don't care what it is. Just to make this where it's just efficient, always select the dot next to residential. So you named it, you selected the dot next to residential, and then right below there, it'll say about 1.5 inches, select template. When you click on it, you should have 3 options or 4. If you have 3, what I've done is I put the tenant landlord template together because they have almost every form that's interchangeable. So knowing that it's not a tenant, Tim is a buyer, I'm going to pick buyer template, or it might say buyer purchase.
Mhm.
Then at the bottom, all I'm going to do is hit save, and I wait a second, and the next screen, I'm looking at a white summary square. And everybody should see it. All you got to do is raise your hand if you're not there and follow with somebody, but you're going to see the white. Yep. I'm at the white summary square. So we did a zip forms, and the buyer's name is Tim. And yeah. Okay, so you're staring at that white summary square. For tonight, all we do is go 2 tabs to the right to documents. And when you click on that, you should have about 26 forms. Does everybody have that? Okay, those are all pre-filled. Okay, so this is, I looked at it, and this is a house. So I'm going to use the 1 to 4 family. On a house and a townhome, we use the 1 to 4. We use the condo on the condo, but a townhome and or a 1 to 4 family, which is a single, duplex, triplex, quadplex, or townhome, we use the 1 to 4. We have the agent, full report, and the tax roll. That's all we need because we already know that Tim's going in at $450 with a 90% LTV, which means it's a 10% down program. And I have the pre-approval letter in my email, hypothetically. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I like to get right to it, is I'm going to open up the 1 to 4 family. And you should see it about 3 or 4 boxes in. Now, I have boxes like this. I don't know if y'all have. I like that, but some people don't. If you don't, just hit that, and it'll go like that. That little, it's like 4 little squares. Okay, and I just like that because it's kind of easy, but I'm not that smart. Right. Yeah. All right, so a 1 to 4. Okay, so before you click on it, or maybe you already did, but if you ever hover over these with your cursor, it'll tell you the whole title. Because like sometimes when I say, I'll be on the phone with you and I'll go, hey, go to the seller's disclosure on lead-based paint. Well, you got to scroll down a little, and it's called the addendum for seller's disclosure of lead-based paint. All you're going to see is addendum for seller, and you might think it's a seller's disclosure, but it's not. But if you hover over it, it'll say addendum for seller's disclosure of lead-based paint, and then you'll know just to click on it. So let's click on it.
The 1 to 4 family.
The 1 to 4 family. And let's start in paragraph 1, and let's look at the tax roll. And I'm going to read it out loud, but I want you to follow along on the tax roll. And I'm older, so I'm going to have to kind of, I like to cap it, and then I don't have to worry about capitalizing just the first name. So I cap everything, but that's just me. It's your call. I don't care. Bobby J is the, if you click on seller, you'll see the first one is Bobby. So go ahead and type it in if you want. And then you tab, and the second line is Dorothy. G.
You typed in their whole name, right? Or you just do it Bob now?
You can do whatever you want. I'm doing it like I'm going to do it tonight and send it to Tim, but you do it how you want if you're comfortable. Everybody's at different stages, so we're just trying to get, we're getting to the drag and drop and to be able to drag a document that we need to drag, you know. All right, so then you tab, and then you've got Tim's name. I know Tim's single right now, maybe not for long, but let's put Tim Ward, and we'll leave it like that. We're going to tab again, and we're at paragraph 2. Here's two ways to fill in paragraph 2. If you look at the agent full report and you look to the right of the picture of the home, you're going to see SUBD. That stands for subdivision. You're going to see to the right of the picture, it says lot blank, block blank. Also on the tax roll, if you look at it right here, under tax information, legal description, it says lot 136, block K, and it says Goldsmith Morse. Okay. If you look at this, it says the same thing, Goldsmith Morse, and you don't see a lot in block. So,
Okay, I see it.
uh-huh. Right. So if you looked at this, there's no lot in block. But if you look at this, there is a lot in block. So we're going to use the tax roll. And that's where you find it always, is right in the middle, right underneath tax information. You're going to see it. And so let's go ahead and what I'm going to do is, okay, so I'm going to put lot 136, if I was writing this correctly. I'm going to put block unit 6. So that's fine. And then I'm going to put the subdivision name. And you see that right after it. Goldsmith with a dash, Morse. Then I'm going to tab the city. And this is in Quinlan. I'm sorry, Quitman. You see that? Okay. And then it says county. Now, there's two ways to find the county. On this tax roll, it doesn't show you the county, but on here it does. So just to the right of the picture of the home, it says county, Wood. And so I'm going to type Wood. Then I go to the next tab and it says known as, and I'm going to type in the physical address, 408 Shady Bend Shore. Then you tab again twice and you're at the zip code. And I'm going to put 75783. All right, so the next two paragraphs, B and C, that's going to be what the seller can't exclude unless they do exclude it, meaning it conveys with the buyer. So what I always like to do is I like to look at the agent full report. So the agent full report, and it kind of cut 2 pages. So if you go to the second page, usually right here at the top, on the far left-hand corner, right around directions and private remarks, it'll say exclusions. So let's say that it did say exclusions and it said chandelier. Well, then we would go to paragraph 2D Delta, and all you would do is type in chandelier. Actually, just copy and paste it. So if it said chandelier and dining room, I would just copy and paste chandelier and dining room. I put it right there in 2D. You with me? You're not? Sit over here next to Paul to walk him through. He'll walk you through it. Just go that way because there's no room. Okay, is everybody with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see in paragraph 2B boy and 2C Charlie, that is what stays in a house that a seller or buyer doesn't have to ask for. Okay, so anything that was going to be excluded out of those 2 paragraphs, the most common is a chandelier. Okay, the most common is a chandelier. All you would do is put chandelier. Okay, let's just act like there was chandelier in the remark. Hey, how you doing? Sit over there by Lola. Go around the other way. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we're going to paragraph 3, and this is where part of the things I've templated. If you go to 3B boy, I've already got third-party financing check marked. Yours, everybody have that? You should. I've already templated that. Now, we already said that it's conventional, so I don't have to uncheck mark that. Why would I uncheck mark it? If it was a cash transaction. If it was a cash transaction, I would uncheck it. But 97% of the time you open up this contract, it's going to be a loan. So that's why it's there. Okay. So we know that we were going in at 450 and 10% is 45,000. Let's put 45,000 with no commas, just 45 and 3 zeros in 3A. You're going to tab a few times until you get into the yellow spot that's in 3B boy. And you're going to put 405 with no commas and 3 zeros. And then tab, and you should have 450 and 3C Charlie.
Yeah.
Everybody get so far?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be 450 with a 10% down. Hey, Stuart. Okay, so let me talk about paragraph 4 because we just had this come up today. I've got an agent in our office that has a listing. The buyer agent made an offer, and she marked paragraph 4 leases. She thought she was talking about a temporary lease. Paragraph 4 is for leases of like solar panels or security system that stays with the house, or they're going to come pull the equipment. That's residential leases. Now, residential lease is going to be an existing tenant, not a seller that's going to be a tenant after closing. So that would, number one, be an income producer. So if you get an offer and you're a listing agent, or the home has an existing tenant in it, your buyer needs a copy of the executed lease, and at closing, the security deposit is going to move over to your buyer. So that's what that's talking about, residential lease. It's talking about a current tenant in the home in a long-term lease, not a seller's temporary lease. Okay. And then the next one is fixtures. Right now, the most common is a solar panel, because that's the bomb.com, right? It's the flavor of the month in America. So people are spending 70 grand on solar panels, not realizing that they stay with the house. And so now a buyer has to qualify. And if I'm working with Tim and he barely qualified at 450 with his debt, he ain't qualifying for this home. And once you see solar panels, that needs to be a red flag where you text the agent and go, hey, what's the payment on the solar panels? Oh, it's $650. Bye-bye. Time to keep looking. Okay. That can't be excluded. It stays with the house. Okay. That's what that paragraph's about. So if there's no current tenants and there's no lease, which is pretty normal that there's not, then that's not even going to be a paragraph that we address. Let's go to paragraph 5, which is the top of, and Lolo's over there if you want to sit next to her, Chris, to kind of get a, so, huh? I don't. He'll sit over there on the couch. Okay, so now we go to paragraph 5, and I always like to say paragraph 5 is earnest option in the title company. So Paul was the agent. Let's say he's with Keller Williams. Paul, or let's say his name was Katie. So because we're going to use the information here on this printout. So he was Katie, yeah, and he told me that I could pick whatever title company I wanted. All right, well then I'm going to pick the title company that that sponsors us. So I'm going to pick Truly Title. All right, so this is really basic if you just read it. So let's do it. Within 3 days of the effective date, buyer must deliver to, boom, that's going to be Truly Title. Never a human being. Even though right after it says comma as escrow agent. Because if I was a new agent, I go, damn, I need to put Roxanne Frederick's number, Frederick's number there, or name. No, because escrow agent is a synonym for just the title company. And if we remember, we never write a check to a human being in a sale, ever, unless it's a home inspector. So earnest and option are made out to one entity today, title company. All right. So there's the title company. You go to the next tab and it says located at, and I would put 2901 Dallas Parkway. And again, you can kind of abbreviate. It doesn't have to be exact. I'd put Plano and that would be good enough for me. I don't have to put Texas and all that crap. It'll auto-populate. Every once in a while, after you put in the zip code, if you want, you can put a semicolon and put Roxanne. And that's just so that everybody knows it's going to her, not a different closer at the title company. All right, this is where I see a lot of confusion. If you tab to the next $sign that's a blank, that's the earnest money. So on a $450,000 house, the earnest money probably needs to be 5 to 10 grand. And that's where you're going to have a come to Jesus meeting with the buyer. And so I would do it like this. Hey, Tim, here's the deal. I talked to Katie. They're in a multiple offer situation. Technically in Texas, you don't need earnest money, but we ain't going to get it if you don't do it. And, I've been in real estate for 30 years. It used to be 1% of the offer price. Today, it's 10%. Now, I'm not asking you to write a $45,000 earnest money check, but it needs to be as much as you feel comfortable. You should get it back if we terminate within the right, your right to terminate, which I'm about to cover next. But the bottom line is, like 2 days before closing, you might get second thoughts and decide you don't want to buy the home. The seller's not going to sue you probably because it's going to take them 18 months to get to a jury. So it could be that, we have to negotiate that earnest money to be able to move on. How much are you comfortable with? And then he tells you, I'm good with 5,000. That's all you can do. So let's put 5,000 there. All right. I put the $100 in there because I don't want you to ever get confused on where the option goes. And, 2 years ago to 3 years ago, it was always $100 for 10 days, $100 for 10 days. Today, you ain't getting an offer with $100 for 10 days. So I have 100 there. I'm going to just add a 0, but I'm going to talk to Tim first. And this is what I'm going to say, because he is my client under this scenario. Okay, here's the deal. In these contracts are as is. So we're going to get a home inspection the next day or so by Mark Serios. He's here in the house. He does home inspections. He'll spend a couple hours at the home. It's about $400. You'll pay him by a credit card. When the inspection's over, you basically got to decide if you're going to shit or get off the pot, because we could ask for repairs, but Katie just told me they have multiple offers. So somebody's going to want this home without any repairs. So basically, when you pay for the inspection, you're going to decide whether you want to buy it or not. If you decide you don't, that amount that I just told you to be $1,000, you're going to lose. Matter of fact, let me really simplify it. There's only one event that happens where you'll ever see it again, and that's if you go to closing. And Tim goes, what do you mean? Well, if a tornado rips the house apart and you don't go through and close, you're going to lose that $1,000. If you decide to go to Montana and never buy the home, you're going to lose $1,000. If the seller's getting divorced and they make up and don't want to sell the home and they're not going to close, even though it's their fault, we didn't go to closing, you're not going to get the $1,000. So no matter what, unless you go to closing, you're not going to get that $1,000 back. Is that a big hit, or are you okay with it? Say you're okay. Boom. Well, then let's do it. Are you good with any higher, or is that comfortable with you? Okay. So here's the deal. That we now have that paragraph done. We have truly title at the address. Earnest money, it says it right there, is first. Option is second. It says it right after it. There's a comma, and it says as earnest money, as option.
The option is basically like
right to terminate. Right. So now we don't do anything with 5A1. And I'll look at contracts before y'all send them out, and you'll sometimes put $1,000 in there for 3 days. I have no idea what you're doing. And I'll text you back and go, let's not reinvent the wheel here. Like, this is done for you. It's a little plug and play. With some training, it's like a no-brainer. You're going to go to paragraph 5, be boy, and I've got 10 days there. So right now, the way we have this offer is $1,000 will buy 10 days. That's $100 a day. I would be having to come to Jesus meeting with Tim again and say, let's make it half of that. 5 days. I saw one today with our Jay Sauls has a listing. It got 15 offers on it over the weekend at 310 in Duncanville. The one he took was $1,000 for 1 day. They did the inspection this morning. The right to terminate is at 5. They want the roof and another thing. And I told him, I said, just call them back and go, we're moving on to the second offer. Unless 5 o'clock comes, and you're okay, but we're not doing any repairs. And just say, we're calling the other agent. There's 12 offers behind us, and they'll readily do it as is. And the other agent blinked. And that's all you got to do. Anytime. That's all you have to do. It's a game of chicken. It's poker. It's betting on the come. The next card. You got to have some intestinal fortitude, because they could blink and you will lose. But as long as you tell the client, and I told him, I said, talk to your seller and just explain, like, hey, we got 12 offers behind this. You don't need to be doing a new roof. Let the buyer do it. Welcome to home ownership in Texas, in DFW specifically. There's no home on the market. 3 years ago, hell yeah, somebody would have to get a new roof. Today, no. Okay. So again, it's going to be that, and you can always, give me a ring and I'll talk to you. So let's change paragraph B, boy, to 5 days.
So 5 days means basically the buyer.
I'm going to get to it. All right, let's go to paragraph 6. Paragraph 6, I've already templated that the seller's paying the title policy. Is everybody good so far? Because any questions, let me know. All right. Again, 4 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, when I got my license, that paragraph, it wasn't even an option. It just said it's going to be a seller charge. There was not a box for buyer when I got my license. So it historically has been a seller charge. A buyer asked me how much it is on a $450. If Tim said, because I'm about to tell Tim to pay for it, and he's going to say, how much is it? And I'm going to say, that's about 1%. What is that light from? See? Oh, he's doing pictures. Freaking going, oh my shit. Wife's going to do, yeah. So when Tim goes, how much is it? I'm going to go, that's about 1%. It's actually less. So you'll look like a hero. And I just know, because I've been doing it long enough, that at $450,000, the title policy is going to be about $3,700. Okay. If it was a $600,000 house, it'd be about $4,800. But is 1% going to make you look good? Because that would be $6,500. It's going to be less. So just use that. You're not title company. You don't need to get a chart out and tell him, just say that's about 1%. And when he goes, I'm good with that. Perfect. Then you need to change that seller, the way I templated it, to buyer. Especially if you're in a multiple offer situation, you're trying to make this offer really good. So it's already templated seller. So you would uncheck it and mark seller, and then it's super easy. You put the same title company that's in paragraph 5 and paragraph 6. So let's put truly title. All right, let's go through this paragraph a little. Just so, because this is a good training, and it's, you know, we'll start e-signing soon, but I want to get through this contract so you can understand it, just where I don't just template it, but you have an understanding when somebody asks you. If you go to 6A, 8, double I, you'll see that I've marked it and I put buyer expense. What that is the title insurance policy that Tim is paying for himself. It goes back to sovereignty of soil and it checks for all the liens. But what it doesn't cover is any discrepancies on the survey. So if the surveyor went out and screwed the pooch on a survey, that's what this insurance is that Tim's paying for. It's like $180 to $200. It's not that big, and it just protects Tim. If the surveyor made an error when they were on the survey, he gets it, finds out later his demarcation lines are off. That's an insurance that protects him. I like to leave it like that as a buyer expense. It's super inexpensive, and I like to just, but that's how you would explain it. And that's about as easy as I can do it. You know that. If this table was my demarcation lines and this water bottle was my house, all the shortage in the survey says that these are my corners. And once I move in, if I find out that this is actually my corner, that I have an insurance to cover me, that protects me on that underage. Okay, that's it. Anything else, you need to refer them to a title person to get a more, you know, how the watch is made. Because we just need to tell them how the clock, what time it is in my opinion. Okay. You go to the top of page 3. Top of page 3 is important whether you're with a buyer or a seller. So I've templated this on purpose this way because my goal is that when you work with a buyer and you submit your offer, we pray that there's a new agent on the other side that doesn't have their broker look at it like I do. Because if I were helping you and you were representing a seller and I got this offer and I saw that paragraph, I would simply say to Tim, does your seller have a survey? And if he goes, no, I said, well, you do not want to mark that paragraph right there. Because what that first paragraph says that if the seller cannot find their survey, they're buying a new one. But if you look at it real quick, it looks like the buyer's paying for a survey. Look at that last line. It's got buyer marked. And if you didn't read that paragraph and you were a new agent with no training, you would think, oh, the buyer's paying for it. Don't worry about it. If you told a seller and so go, hey, what's that paragraph? Oh, don't worry about it, Cassandra. It looks like the buyer's paying the survey. Let's move on. If Cassandra is my seller and can't find the survey, Cassandra's buying a new one. So let's read it. Within 3 days, Cassandra has to deliver the survey. That's what it says. And then in bold print, it says, if Cassandra fails to furnish the survey, buyer shall get a new one at Cassandra's expense. And I just had it happen with an agent. She was a student at Champions and she was like overwhelmed working with me. She was on the listing side representing her dad. And I have it templated like this, even in mine. And 5 days before closing, she calls me up and she's like, hey, Doug. And she's like, hey, does your buyer still need the survey? It was a cash transaction. And I was like, yeah, my buyer wants a survey. He's like, oh. And I go, oh. I mean, I already knew it. I go, oh, the title company just called you. She's like, how'd you know? I said, well, because your dad's now going to, is her dad was a seller? I go, because your dad's about to buy a new survey. And she's like, yeah, no, I never read that paragraph. I'm like, if you were with me, you would. I go, but you decided to go to Ebby Holiday. Because that's what you said. And, you know, again, I mean, it's crazy because if you look at that paragraph, it looks like the buyer's paying the survey. That's why I template like that for you guys, because maybe you get a free survey out of it if the seller can't find their survey. So when you represent a seller and you're at the table and you go, hey, Tim, do you have your survey? Because I'm going to list it later today in the MLS. And he goes, oh, yeah, it's up in the attic. I might say, why don't you go find it? Yeah. Because if he's lived here for 20 years, up in the attic, isn't the box way back in the corner of my attic? You get up in the attic in the summer for about 5 minutes. You're like, F this. And then you go, well, Doug, you told me the buyer's paying for the survey anyway. I just got screwed. Because I'm going to go, oh, actually, the title company called me and said, that's not what that paragraph says. Yeah. I need you to find your survey. Well, he goes, that's not what you told me. I'm going to be paying for the survey now as the agent out of my commission. So just trying to save you some money on that. Does that make sense? They're about $400, about the same as an inspection. Depends. I mean, if it's on 15 acres, it's going to be, I just did one on 12 acres and it was $1,500. So, all right. So I like that paragraph marked. Yes, ma'am.
Let's just say the seller has the survey and the title company does not accept, or the lender does not accept the survey.
Then it's whoever marks it at the end of that. Then it will be a new buyer charge. Okay. Does that make sense? That's why also, though, when I went over with Tim, this contract as a buyer now, I was like, hey, this paragraph, we're asking the seller to find their existing survey. If they don't find it, they're going to buy a new one. If they find it and it's no longer deemed acceptable by title or lender, you're going to buy a new one. And I'll just tell him it's on your closing cost estimate you got from your lender, because normally the buyer does pay for the survey, just like normally the title's paid by the seller. So it's really not hurting him. It's in his closing cost estimate he already got in the pre-approval letter that he's going to pay for a survey about $450. Does that make sense or not?
Yes.
Okay.
If
All right.
If the box is not marked, then it's going to be the buyer always paying that, you know?
What box? I need to know exactly what box.
C, after the C, right? You have 3 boxes.
Yeah, so it's pretty basic. B is that the buyer's paying for a new survey, and C is that the seller's paying for a new survey. Now, if you're in a multiple offer situation, what might I mark here to make it easy on the seller? The third one. I'd mark the third one. It just says the seller's going to buy it. Let's say that Katie, the agent, she didn't know whether the seller had it or not. And I would just I would make the buyer pay it. So I'd mark the second paragraph. Now, let's say that we get it executed, it goes to the title company. I might tell the title company, hey, hold off on the survey because the seller's going to look for theirs. You can negotiate that. You know, once it's executed, it doesn't mean you're absolutely going to have a buyer pay for one. If the seller all of a sudden says, oh, I found it, well, you'll see if it's acceptable. And you know, it's not going to be a charge.
But if you're working with the buyer, you prefer to leave it with the
I don't prefer, I just, because you're able to make it, I think that's going to be the best bet for your buyer, because you might get away with a free survey. All right.
You said the title is paid by the seller. Survey paid by the buyer.
I said that historically, yeah. But I'll tell you that in the market right now, the offers that I'm seeing, I haven't seen a seller pay for a survey in a year and a half. But I do template it that way to protect you. Okay. All right. Let's go to 6D Delta. And you'll notice that I possibly have typed in residential pool and other residential uses. Does everybody see that? Okay, perfect. All that's saying is the paragraph when it starts said blah, 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 blah. But what it's basically saying is that if the deed restrictions come back, HOA docs, and they say that you can't use that home for residential purposes, that the number of days below that, I think I have 3 in yours. Okay, that means that the buyer has that long to be able to terminate. So let's say that I'm working with Patricia and she wants to make this house a daycare. I want to put daycare right there, because that means when the HOA docs and the title, the deed restrictions come back and say, hey, like right now, I got a listing in Sanger for 2.5 acres. It's on, you can have 1 hoofed animal. Okay. Well, let's say I was working with Cassandra. She had 2 horses. I might put 2 hoofed animals, 2 large hoofed animals. Well, the deed restrictions come back and say you can only have 1. She'll have 4 days or 3 to back out and get her earnest money back. That's it. All right. So I like putting it in there, residential uses, something like that. And again, you know, it's already templated. All right, let's go down to 6E2, just a couple paragraphs down. You'll see that I have marked there is an HOA. And again, no matter who's joining us online, your templates are done the same way through me. So this, even though MLSs are different, this is all the same. So we should be able to follow along no matter where you're at, what region. Most homes have an HOA, about 97%. So I like to market for you guys that you don't have to market unless there's not an HOA, and then you would unmarket and mark the other one. Let's keep going. Go down to paragraph 7. And about 97% of the time, I'd argue you also have the seller's disclosure already. And that's why it's already marked. Okay. If you don't have it, then you're going to unmark that because you obviously don't have it. And then you mark paragraph 2. And paragraph 2 says you're giving the buyer a blank number of days. I usually put 3 days. I don't template it. I just would put 3 days there. So you would uncheck mark the first box. You mark the second box. You put 3 days. And now your buyer gets it within 3 days. The moment your buyer gets it, they have how many days to terminate? 7. Let's read it. Buyer has not received the notice. Within 3 days after the effective date of this contract, seller shall deliver the notice to buyer. If buyer does not receive the notice, buyer may terminate this contract at any time prior to closing, and the earnest money will be refunded to buyer. If seller does deliver the notice within 3 days, buyer may terminate this contract for any reason within 7 after buyer receives the seller's disclosure. So that's when y'all call me sometimes and you're like a week out from closing. I have had this happen 4 times in the last month. Hey, my buyer doesn't want to close anymore. I'm going to ask you 3 things real quick. Did you ever get the seller's disclosure? Yeah, we did. Oh, you're screwed there. Is it in a mandatory HOA? Yeah. Oh, have you got the HOA docs yet? No. Well, on a house, when you get the mandatory HOA docs, the day you receive them is day 0. You have 3 days to terminate at midnight. Nobody even knows that. If it's in a condo, you have 6 days. Okay. So the title company sends those to you. The moment you get them is the same time the buyer got them. And that's day 0. And you count the next day, 1, 2, 3 on a house, midnight on a mandatory. You can terminate for any reason. But again, if you've already got the HOA docs, you already got the seller's disclosure, your option's out, you're screwed. Okay. But that would be an out. Now, let me explain something else. Let's say that I'm working with Tim and there wasn't a seller's disclosure. So I marked the second box, I put 3 days, and Katie's the listing agent. We get a home inspection and Katie forgets to get me the disclosure. I'm not going to say nothing because I got a buyer hat on and I'm trying to give him a right to terminate all the way up to the day of closing. We've already done a home inspection. I know more about the home today than the seller's disclosure knows. I mean, we had a general doctor look at the home. So I would just kind of shut up. And if Tim said, hey, don't I need to get the seller's disclosure? I'd say, well, I can ask for it. I go, or not. And then I would explain to him why my theory is that we shouldn't, because life's fluid and random and you might have something come up and you go, man, I really want to get out of this. And I'm like, well, I left you that little flag to play. I left you that card in your deck still. Does that make sense? That's true advocacy. And if he terminates with you and you were the only one that knew it, that he had that ability, he'll be your client for life. If you effed him and told him he didn't have a right when he did and he ever found out, you get sued and you'll never have a client. So the goal would be that you don't want to buy a home he doesn't like. So you forego that commission maybe for another month, 2 months, find him the home he likes, you have him forever. Make sense? Sure.
Well, if you don't get the seller's disclosure in 3 days, do you lose your option?
No, if you don't get the seller's disclosure ever, you have 7 days to terminate into infinity. You always have 7 days into the future whenever you get that disclosure. So if you don't have it, you mark paragraph 2. I put 3 days in there. That means either you get it in 3 days or you don't, but it doesn't matter because whenever you get it, you got 7 days to terminate. Even if you got it in 3 days, you got 7. The mere fact that you didn't have it when you wrote an offer, you got 7 days from the moment you get it. When the moment you get it, day 0. No, you'll never get your option back, but your earnest. I thought you said earnest, but you would get your earnest back. You'll never get the option back, period, unless you go to closing. Well, I mean, it's a little, here's the deal. And this is why I just had this talk with an agent in an office. Financing is a funny bird because the third-party financing, you'll see terms like, and earnest money shall be refunded to buyer, and the buyer reads it, or you might read and go, oh yeah, you get your earnest money back. Outside of the option, any kind of triggers that say that you can get the earnest money back, the title company is going to release an earnest money signed by the buyer and the seller. Well, the problem is the seller's going to be mad. And if the seller goes, I'm not signing that, you've had plenty of time to get a loan. I think you're playing games. Even if you're not, people look at a cow getting run over and all of us would say it got run over by different reasons. And so everybody's got their own interpretation. So the only true way you'll get the earnest money back is if you're clearly within the option time. And I'm about to discuss how you know that, because we have an agent right now that called me and the listing agent said, you didn't deliver the earnest money in time, and they did. And it was factually how I found out. And she was just talking outside of her mouth. So yeah, does that make sense? Did I answer it? Yeah, okay. All right, so now let's go to 7D, which is the top of page 5. And I like to go through this and then we're going to e-sign it. Okay, so we're going to be fine. We'll go through it all together. These contracts are as is. Okay, now let's say that you walked into this house and that window had a busted seal and that's a living room and it was cracked. You might go and unmark that D1 that says as is and mark the second box, and you would put cracked window in living room. And that means you're specifically asking for that repair, but you still have a right to terminate, so you'll still get inspection. It just means that you won't have to negotiate that because that's specific. Does that make sense? Let's say it was let's say there's an unimproved contract and there's a bunch of crap in the lot. You would just put seller to completely clear land of trash, and you'd mark paragraph the second one. Okay, so that's when you're asking for specific things. I always believe that I would rather just mark the first box and know that everything's up in the air to negotiate after the inspection report, because I never know how smart the listing agent is. And the listing agent might have told Tim, the seller, oh, they're only asking for that. And then we ask for an amendment, and then Tim's like, you told me that they're only asking for the crap to be pulled from the land. Now they want me to do this and that. I mean, I don't want to do any of that. So that way, that's the reason why I'll tell a buyer, like, hey, we could ask for it, but let's just find out what else is wrong, because there could be something bigger than what this one little cracked window is. And you might not care about the window when we find out we can get the roof done, or, you know, something like that. All right, from there we go to paragraph 7H, and I've templated $700. That's the cost of a residential home warranty. They're called service contracts, residential service contracts, home warranty, synonym, okay? I have one on my house with fixed. My pool pump went out last night, like dead, and I was like, oh, F me, because we had the pool party. So I called, and they just replaced it, $75. The whole pump is about, you know, $500. That's what the home warranty's for. I would argue that it would be good for you to use Fixed in Victoria, and the reason is because she is personally involved with that firm, and so when you have something that's going to hit the fan, we have a personal tie. You know, they help sponsor our company. They'll get an answer like that. Not if you use like a generic American Home Shield, if that makes sense. Okay. And Dawn used to be with Fixed, so yeah, Fixed. It's FIX''D and/or Cinch. But you know how I send out the sponsor sheet? She's on there. Yeah. And so again, I mean, they're about $700. It could be up to $1,000. I'm putting 700 in there just kind of, you know, to protect you. Bottom line is I've deleted that almost in every offer, or y'all have when you send them to me, because that is kind of a weird paragraph. If you read it and stop after 3 words, it says buyer's going to buy it, but that's not really what it says. It says buyer's going to purchase it in their name, but they're going to be given a credit of $700 towards the cost. And here's the reason, if you want to know a little history. When I got my license, that paragraph was not there, and we put it in paragraph 11. Seller to pay for home warranty for 1 year for Patricia. Well, what happened is the title company would order the home warranty in the seller's name. And there was a little weird law in Texas that at closing, the seller could get a rebate, a refund in 3 days, a complete refund. So now Patricia was the buyer in a house thinking she had a home warranty, and it'd be refunded back to the seller 3 days before after closing. So now they order it in the buyer's name, and that's why that verbiage is there. So it's bought in the buyer's name. The seller has no right to get a refund on it. Okay. If you go to paragraph 8, I like to say CPS, and that stands for Child Protective Services. A child calls CPS on a parent or a spouse, and that is the relationship you have to disclose in that paragraph. If you have a child, parent, or a spouse, not a child, parent, or a sibling. So you can always disclose if you want, hey, Tim's my brother, but I don't have to. Okay. Now, if I don't do that and Dawn is the listing agent, she goes, hey, I noticed that the buyer's name and your name are the same. Is that your relative? And I'm like, oh, it's my brother. Well, you need to put it in paragraph 8. Don't argue. It's not, don't die on that hill. Go, oh, I'm so sorry. It was just a misstep. Let me change it. There's no reason to get into arguments with agents about stuff that's not that important, okay? But I just like to say CPS, it's easy to remember. CPS stands for Child Protective Services. A child calls on a parent or a spouse. Boom, you're done. Now, if you are buying your own home, which a number of you have done, if Patricia was buying her own home, right there, she would just say buyer is buyer's agent. If Tim was selling his home, seller is seller's agent. That's it, okay? Allie Pratt, she buys 5 or 6 homes for her husband. Every time I look at their contract, it says seller is seller agent, buyer is buyer agent. That's it. Okay. It doesn't have to be any more specific. You go to paragraph 9, all you do is click on the blank and you're going to have a calendar. It'd probably be a good idea to find out from the lender if they can close it when your buyer wants to close. So you would ask the lender, hey, today is the 20th. I was going to put the end of next month. And the lender says, yeah, I just need 30 days. Just click on that blank and a calendar pops up. Go 1 month forward and pick a business day. I probably pick the 26th of August. That's perfect. It gives the buyer a weekend to move their stuff if they're, you know, a 40-hour week worker. You go down to paragraph 10, and that's called possession. I've templated closing and funding. That means that when the property closes and it funds, your buyer owns it. Let's say that Katie said, hey, my seller needs 15 days, like Paul said. Well, then I'd unmark that, wouldn't I? And I would mark the second box, which is according to a temporary lease. Then I go down to paragraph 11, and I don't think I've ever put anything in there in 30 years. I just don't like to, but again, I don't micromanage you guys. So I've had some agents in the last week say, hey, can I put a response time? And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Seller to respond by tomorrow at noon. Isn't that just the agent saying, hey, got your offer? I mean, that's a response. So it's stupid. A seller's got 12 offers and you want to be a prick and ask him to respond by tomorrow at 5 p.m. or you're going to withdraw your offer. You ain't even going to be looked at, brother. Like, that's the stupid. That's like you have the only widget in the world, and I'm trying to tell you how to respond to my offer, and everybody in this room is wanting to buy your widget. You're going to be like, screw you, bud. I got 12 other people that want to pay higher than you, and you're putting demands on me? What are you, high? So again, it's not going to happen. It's like the Bachelorettes right now. There's 2 of them. but there's 50 guys. And I watch it with my wife. And I'm like, it's a supply and demand, you know? I mean, the girls are like, yeah, you can go. Well, because there's 50 guys left. All right. But if there's only one guy, it'd be a little different. It's the same thing. Human relationships in real estate, almost identical. Okay. So that's why I would probably leave that blank. You go to paragraph 12 for probably the next 5 to 8 years, you'll leave that blank also. That's where you ask the seller to pay any closing costs for your buyer. I did. I'll talk louder. So paragraph 12, and this is like a little thing that I've just learned over time. That's where the buyer goes, hey, I want the seller to pay my closing costs. And now you think you're a lender and you want to put a figure in there and you have no idea what the hell you just put in there. Who would be the best person to call to find out what figure to put there? The lender. Yeah. Hey, Patricia with ABC Lending. Hey, I'm working with Cassandra. We're going conventional 10% down. What's the most a seller can pay towards closing? $7,212. I'm going to hit that little blank there and I'm going to put 7212 and hit a tab. And I just am asking the seller to pay $7212 in her closing costs. That's it. Okay.
And that's the max based on my lending.
Yeah. Right. Now, let's say hypothetically that I put 8,000, but I never talked to the lender. At some point, don't we raise the price to cover that? Yes, we do. We raise the price because the seller goes, I want to net the same as if I wasn't paying your 8,000. So if I'm going to pay your 8,000, I'm going to raise the price 8,000 and pay your 8,000. Now you go to closing and 2 days before your lender says, we could only use 7. Didn't you just overpay for the house for $1,000 bucks? Mm-hmm. You think she knows? Oh, hell yeah. The buyer, they might not know math, but they know their math. When it comes to their paycheck, and they're like, wait, hold on, Doug. You said 30 days ago, 8,000. Why is the lender only saving 7? Oh, I don't know. I think I guessed that amount. Really? And it's a $400,000 house, Doug. You're making 12 grand. I think you're going to make 11 grand because I think you're going to give me back $1,000 if you ever want me as a business again. And that's what you'll do. Not if you got the number from her though, and it's wrong. That's her fault. So that's why.
Sorry. So
no, you're good.
Any credit coming from the seller towards me, the buyer, towards the closing costs, correct?
12.
Yeah. All right. So from paragraph 12, and this is just me, because I don't want to go through every paragraph. I just like to go to paragraph 22. And if a buyer says, hey, what's paragraph 13 through 20? I'm sorry, go to 21. What's paragraph 13 through 21? You just say, it talks about prorations. If the house gets struck by lightning, you don't have to buy the home. If it burns to the ground, you don't have to buy the home. And it's just some boilerplate document. Okay. If they want an explanation, then call me, I'll help you. But it's not really, you can get by that just like that. When you get down to paragraph 21, what you're going to see is you need to put your email in the top line. I like to put the buyer's email and the buyer's phone number on the left side if I'm working with a buyer. And this is a buyer template, transaction. So if it was tim@timward.com, I put tim@timward.com. I put Douglas at dhsrealitydfw.com. And then I put Tim's phone number. That's so the title company knows how to contact all the parties. And then you let the seller worry about it on the right side. Then you go to paragraph 22, and you can see I already templated the first and the third boxes on the left because those are the most common financing addendum, third party, and most homes have an HOA. Remember when we went over paragraph 3B and I said it was already marked? Well, if it's marked there, it needs to be marked here. If it's not marked there, it can't be marked here. Remember when I talked about 6E2, the HOA? Well, it's marked there, it's marked here. But if you unmark the HOA in 6E2, you'd have to unmark it here. Now, didn't we say there's a seller's temporary lease? We did. Look on the right side at the top of that column. It says seller's temporary lease. So we would check mark that. Let's say the home was built in 1978. Look 3 down from that. It says addendum for lead-based paint. You'd mark that. Let's say that the seller needed to sell their property to buy this one. That's sale of other property by buyer. You're going to see it on the first column, 6 down. It says addendum for sale of other property by buyer. That means the buyer has to sell their home to qualify to buy this one. That's exactly what the title of those documents are in your transaction documents. So you'll always know, like, hey, what form am I looking for? That exact title is in your documents. I've already put them there. Okay. All right. So then you go a page and a half. And we should be on page 10. And on the left side, I pre-filled that. Does everybody have it pre-filled? Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. On the right side, sometimes Zip Forms adds your stuff again, but that's not going to be the case. That's going to be the listing agent's information. So let's look at this And I'm going to, without typing it, I'm going to tell you where all the answers are if you just look at the right side, because the left side is pre-filled. The right side is from the agent full report, and it's right here. So if you grab the second page of the MLS, here's where you find it. On the top right, it says listing broker firm. You would delete it and you would put Lone Star Realty Winsburg. You go to the right of it and it says license number. Looking on this agent full report, look right over here. It says BKRLIC, and that stands for broker license number. And you would put 0469203. Does everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. Then right below there, it says listing agent's associate's name. Right here, it says Katie Thornton. And look it to the right in parentheses of Katie's name. It has her license number. Look to the right of that. It's got her phone number. Right below there, it says listing supervisor or licensed supervisor. Look in that same section right here, over to this side, it says LO supervisor. That name goes there. John Jarvis goes under licensed supervisor. To the right of John Jarvis in parentheses is his license number. And then you're also going to put his phone number. And then it says city, state, and zip with the address. That's directly underneath Lone Star Realty Winsburg. It says 100 West Coke Road, Winsburg, Texas, 75494. What you're basically doing is you want the left side to be identical and linked to the right side. The left side says other broker. The right side says listing firm. You stop at city, state, and zip. You don't go any further. Both sides are equal if there's two brokers. If there's one broker, what's that called? Intermediary. In that scenario, everything on the left would be deleted. Everything. Uncheck mark everything and delete everything on the left. You move it to the right, and if Tim was the only agent, all you need is him once. And the right side would be filled out to city, state, and zip. But if Tim was the listing agent and Dawn represented Lola as a buyer, she's called the selling agent, SELLING. He's the listing agent, but she's the selling agent. It's weird because if I'm going to sell this shirt tonight, my wife would say, oh, you're selling it? But on this, selling is who?
Oh, yeah.
The buyer. So if Dawn was the buyer's agent, she's the selling agent. And that means that with one broker, and this could happen because we have a lot of them, intermediary, the left side's completely deleted. The right side, everything's filled out. The only difference is the whole thing is filled out, and the top part would be his name. And right at the, after city, state, and zip, it'd be her name. It'd be her license number. It'd be her email, her phone. My name would be in both. So everything else would be the same. Does everybody see that? It would still be DHS, the license number. But if it was only Tim, then it only has to be him once. I don't need the selling part. It's not rocket science. Like, I know he's the only agent. Okay. And then you go down a little further and you'll see the 3%. Okay. Now we had an agent that somehow deleted the 3%, sent the offer over, it got executed. The other agent, who is the listing agent, texted my agent, said, oh, you're doing it for free. And she called me freaking out. I was like, you're not doing it for free. I said, somehow that got deleted. I said, that's not even part of the contract. This page is not part of the contract. You know what? The contract, when it stops, after the signatures of the buyer, which is on the page before. So in Netris and the MLSs around the state of Texas, our MLS dictates the commission, not anything else. So if that happened to be blank, which it won't be, but if it was, and the other agent tries to bully you, you can have them call me, and we'll get to it really quick, because that's just not educated agent on that end. Okay. So our MLS dictates the commission. So if you look on this and you look right above where it says Lone Star Realty or Lone Star Realty, you'll see right above it, it says exclusive right to sell. And right above that, it says 2.5. Does everybody see it? Mm-hmm. That BAC stands for buyer agent commission. And that's what you're getting. So normally it could be 3, all commissions are negotiable. This one's 2.5. You put 2.5 there, change it from 3. Even if you left it blank, you're getting 2.5 because the MLS says that this is what you're getting. You get it. Okay.
But the selling, like seller's agent, you know, they can go and upgrade that to 0, right? Like after you have sent offer to the one.
I don't know. Let me talk about the break. Let me get through this. All right. So now we're going to hit save at the top. It's 4 over at the top. You'll see eSign, MLS Connect, record, save. I always will say, look for save and hit it, and you're going to see another thing that's
save is PDF, just save.
Just save, and then you'll see it say saved with an exclamation mark.
Yep.
All right, now it's saved, And now let's do the training on e-signing. So I've got Tim's email and he's single. What I want to do is I want to send this. He's going to sign it. It's going to come back to me. It's going to go into my documents in zip forms. It's going to be at the bottom of my documents. I'm going to save it as a PDF. I'm going to forward it to the listing agent and then forward the pre-approval letter. That's how we're going to do it until we get a little more advanced. Okay. Super simple. So I'll walk you through this no matter where I'm at. So here we go. Question. You good? Hit me. I'm gonna pick a couple, but I'm just not gonna go through all of them, Chip. So we can. All right. So in the left corner, hit e-sign, and you're gonna go to another screen. You don't touch anything other than if there's multiple forms, then you're gonna hit select documents to include, which is that little link. Everybody, let me know if you clicked it. Now you should see a single line, and on the right you can move it up and down. It's going to be all your forms that I put in there. So let's just say that we already did the third party. Scroll down a little and look for third party and check mark it. Look at the addendum for property subject to mandatory homeowners. Check mark it. Scroll down. And let's go ahead and check mark the seller's temporary lease. And let's go ahead and do the addendum for seller's disclosure on lead-based paint. And then hit close. And you should have 5 documents, the 1 to 4, and it already check marked it because you hit e-sign out of it. So you didn't have to check mark whatever you hit e-sign out of. Does that make sense? So whatever form you're in, if you hit e-sign, it checks it automatically. All right. So I don't care if you have all 5, but you get the point. All right. All right. So now in the right-hand corner, hit next, and you're going to get a screen of anybody that you could send this to. You can pick whatever. I just did like 5. I did the 1 to 4, third party, HOA. That's good enough. I just want to get more than just the 1 to 4. Okay, so now we go to buyer 1. And because we didn't do the buyer rep agreement, in mine, it just says Tim Ward, but it has no email. Does anybody have an email for Tim or anybody? So some of yours buyer 1 just have a blank. Okay, let's try to check mark it. So next to buyer 1 on the left, check mark it. And you'll see that even if you don't have anything, it will tell you to plug in first name, last name, and an email. So just put your name in and put the email as d@d.com. I just want something real easy because I want you to be able to check mark it. It'll just be a bogus, this is training. So now once you have a name, first and last, and an email, now go back and check mark it and it will let you. Does everybody see that? Yeah, it don't matter. Just training. Now it'll let you check mark it. Let's say that Tim was married. You could go to buyer 2 and you could try to check mark it and it'll tell you have to put a first name, last name, and an email. So it's almost dummy proof in that regard. Once you put the first name, last name, email, then you check mark it. Then all you do is hit close and you're either looking at one buyer, Tim, or Tim and his whoever he's with. Okay. Now, if there was 2 people on the left, it would say 1 and 2. Right now it just has a 1. Some cultures, they do care who gets the contract first to sign. And it's only because we have every type of person in our company that I know this. I would absolutely text the buyer and go, hey, Cassandra, it's Doug. Hey, who wants the contract first? Oh, I want it. Oh, okay, no problem. Well, if it said Tim 1 and Cassandra 2, I would just hit that drop down and make her 1, and I'd hit the drop down and make him 2. I think that's really, it sounds goofy. It's really important. Okay. So now all I do is hit next and I wait a second in the right corner and all the forms are going to load.
How do you add the second box? Like if you're putting 2 people there? No, I missed that.
All you do is check mark buyer 2 on the left and it'll tell you to put a first name. All right. Let me know if your screen looks like this. Okay. So all you got to do is hit next and the next one says send invitation and you just send it. But what I like to do first is I like to scroll down for training and I like to scroll down to the bottom of each page and make sure that I see an initial prompt for Tim. So let's go to the bottom of the first page and you should see something like this where it does have an initial prompt. Let's say that you didn't. Let's just say that, oh my God, Tim's initial prompt's not there. This is where I want to do the training tonight. Look in the right corner. It says Tim Ward. And right below there, it says drag and drop. Click the drag and drop. And that's a menu where you can drag his initial. So it says initial here, drag it and put it right next to his initial down there. It's where he has two of them.
Where it says initial here?
Uh-huh. It should look just like this.
Yeah.
And then you're dragging that initial down to the bottom of the first page.
I'm sorry. How'd you get today?
Okay, well, you need to uncheck mark, just make one buyer, hit close, and now you should be staring at one person, and then hit next, and then we'll be at the same place. All right, so here's where we are. Now, if I didn't have initials on anything, I could drag and drop every page. If Tim, what's your wife's name? If Brandy was underneath Tim, all I would do is hit that. I pick Brandy, and then that initial becomes Brandy. It's that easy, okay? All right, so it is already on all the pages. So I'm going to hit next, and I'm going to hit send invitation, and I just send it to Tim. So now I'm going to text Tim. Hey, Tim, it's Doug. Hey, I just want to let you know, I just sent you the contract. I just want you to know it could have gone to your spam or junk. Will you let me know when you got it? And it's going to open up. It's going to ask you to initial. And will you text me when you've initialed? Yeah. Once he's initialed, it comes back to my documents, and it'll be at the bottom. In that transaction at the bottom, you'll open it, save it as a PDF. You'll send it as an email to the listing agent. You'll forward the pre-approval letter, and you're on like Donkey Kong. Okay? So now we want to talk about what happens when there's no seller's disclosure and you get it from the agent, but it's not in zip forms. And we want to drag and drop initials for the seller instead of having them print it out and initial it on their end. So hit the green back button and get back to your documents. So hit the green back button until it looks like this. When you're here, okay, you're going to see that at the top, about 5 over from Esign, it says add doc. And all you do is click that. And hopefully everybody has some type of PDF on their computer right now. I don't care what it is, just load it. So it's going to say browse for document, browse for, I don't care what you load, but load something. It'll say browse for a file. I'm going to go in and I'm going to find something to just load because I'm going to initial it and show you how to hit open. You'll see it there and then hit OK. Everybody let me know if you're there. It just moved it to the bottom of your documents. So now scroll down to the bottom. Okay, so now open it. So let me show you what mine looks like so you'll know. That's it down at the bottom, PDF. When I open it, is everybody good? Mm-hmm. Okay, when I open it, I'm going to have the same little thing, e-sign. It's just not going to be in the left corner. It's going to be 3 over. So hit e-sign. Mm-hmm. And again, this will be the only document, but you could have more. You could have the seller's disclosure. You could have addendum for lead-based paint. So you could have a number of things, but that's how you save it on your desktop. Then you add it, and now it's here. All right, hit next. And you still need to get Tim, so or whoever you had as buyer 1. So check mark one person. Hit close. Should be at this screen. Hit next, and you're going to see whatever load that you had as a PDF. It is not going to have an initial at the bottom. So scroll to the bottom and just act like there's an initial prompt and go over to underneath Tim's name, hit drag and drop, get the initial and drag it wherever the hell you want, just for fun. And go ahead and act like there's also a signer. So it says sign here, drag that. Act like you have to date it, drag the date. So does everybody see how that's kind of cool? Let's say you needed to print Tim's name. It says signer name right there. Drag that over and look, it says Tim Ward, or it says whatever name you have. Then all you do is hit next and send invitation, and you just send it to him as a PDF to sign. Does everybody got that? Yep. Okay. So again, that's kind of how the training I wanted to cover today. And Brandon, are you already done, or is he doing photos? If anybody wants to go in there for headshots, he's on right now. Does anybody want me to cover anything else? You what? Oh, you done? Oh, okay. Oh, there's people in there? Oh, okay. What do you have? Who is that with your mask on? I can't see.
Yeah, it's Sonali.
Oh, Sonali. I didn't even recognize you. Okay. What you got? Okay. All right. So I'm going to answer, and then Lola can after that. So, all we have an agent named Natasha Dimbla. Okay. Okay, no, you're fine. I'll answer. So here's the myth behind apartment locating. It sounds like romantic, like, oh, I'm an apartment locator. No, you have to know some tenants to walk into an apartment and sign you in. I mean, that's it. So you got to have people, like yesterday I met with Hammer. He's got some brothers that are 18 and 19, and one's going to college. All of the friends are staying at UTD. And they live in Richardson, but their parents want to put them in apartments to give them the college experience. I was like, you got to be all over that. Say, I'll give you half of whatever I make with an apartment. So however you get your, you're going to get business through people you know. It's going to be your culture, your church, your groups, your friends groups, rec sports, tennis groups, whatever. And you just go, hey, like I've got kids that are 20. I got two 24-year-olds and two 21-year-olds. My 21-year-old's licensed. He's in Baytown. I'm in the host state. So using him as an example, his three sisters are all in apartments